Hey. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Let's Talk Marketing with Nathan A. Webster podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Webster, and I'm excited to chop it up with you. Today, I want to focus on opportunities with minority and women-owned businesses, but it's just not me. I got a guest on the show. His name's Bjorn Sorensen. This is a cat I worked with for over 10 plus years. Crazy to say that because we are in a different age and era, but I don't want to steal his thunder. So Bjorn, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. I am honored and very happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. One thing that I am really happy to do as we start the new year in 2021 is to talk about opportunities. And I'm really excited that you're going to talk about this. But before we talk about that, can you please tell the listeners from all over the world who you are, what you do, your background, and how you got started with this?
Yeah. Oh, it's been a great road for me, Nathan, because I have, the nonprofit background and the business background and the teaching background. I majored in Spanish and political science. And then, of course, what I did with that is taught English in Japan. Makes perfect sense, right? And when I got back and got all those new experiences and creative ideas, I decided to get a master's in teaching, and I taught for 9 years, mainly fifth grade, but all grade levels. I subbed for a year. I did middle school, the whole thing. Teaching's a hard gig. It was very tiring. So I got out of that in my early 30s, and I went into political work, nonprofit work. I worked on some general community campaigns. I came up here to Montana and worked on a gubernatorial campaign, a guy in 2004 who ran as a Democrat with a Republican running mate and won. And so that was a fascinating experience about, the power of good ideas being more important than party, and being able to talk about more things that help this country. And then after that, I fell into bookstore work and was a manager for 13 years at a local Vancouver business. And that was great because as a community manager at the Barnes and Noble, I was able to work with nonprofits and businesses of all sizes, and especially schools, with my teaching background. And it's been great, through that working with you, because you've done all sorts of things in marketing and nonprofit. So I got to meet great people like you and really just appreciate everything Clark County has to offer. It's been a fantastic ride.
Yeah, and it has been, and I don't want to say it's sad. It's bittersweet that you will be departing and leaving us for a short little while. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
miss my Bjorn around the community, but the community is gonna look much different in the landscape of this year and beyond.
Well, a lot of people have gone through changes, and unfortunately, the business had to downsize a little bit. My position was eliminated, and I was really sad at the time because working in that bookstore was fantastic, fantastic crew, great community events. Just right in the middle of town, a real big hub thing, and I really miss it. But missing something is a good thing because you had a really good time, and a job like that, and like marketing, like what you're doing, really sets you up for a lot of other things in your life, and the ways that you can make a difference, and the opportunities and the networking. So now I'm going to teach English in Spain for a little bit and see how they run things and get some more ideas, business ideas from that.
Yeah, when you say Spain, that's not like South America's type of Spanish. That's a Europe Spanish. That's a whole nother Spanish right there.
You are absolutely right. That is very astute, and it's going to be a totally different accent, totally different phrases.
Mm.
It's a little bit more of a, if I could speak really generally, kind of a New York direct vibe than what you're used to in South America, maybe, again, very generally. So that should just be a trip, and really fun. It's a little scary because I've never been to Spain, but I'm ready to see what challenges and what new things come up, and it'll just expand my world. So I'm just super pumped.
So speaking of which is the perfect segue. Not too long ago, I want to say maybe a year, maybe a little bit longer than that. I think it was longer than that. A couple of years ago, you wrote a blog for us because you wanted to continue to dip your toes in new things, and I will just say spread your wings. And I think, like you were saying, when your position got eliminated, it gave you this opportunity. But the opportunity that we talked about was with Connected. And for those of you that maybe be your first time listening, Connected is a service from NW and Associates that I started back of, I would say, June, July, made it official in October, to where minority owned, women owned, and veteran owned business owners, leaders, and learners would come together, not going to Portland, but stay in Vancouver, Southwest Washington, and start building up our economic development resources and network so that we can be together and work together and build each other and build together and grow together, right? But there were so many different things that we were kind of like running up against. But what one thing that was for sure was like, wow, like the pun in the name is like we are so connected to this, but we lack data, we lacked any sort of study. And you can go to Brookings, you can go to like the Ford, and you can get all these things that's specific to big metropolitan major cities. But being Vancouver, we're a suburb, a major suburb, a bedroom community of Portland. And so when Bjorn came in, we were talking about this. And so Bjorn, here, I wanted you to take it from here because you really dropped a value bomb with the article that you wrote.
Well, I appreciate that. You're right. There is a lot of great sources on sources of information on how we can grow the economy through honoring, hardworking small businesses, be they minority owned, women owned, male dominated, male owned. And so you gave me that chance. And the big impetus here in Washington was the disparity study put out by the Office of Women and Minority Business Enterprises. It's a subcabinet of Governor Inslee's. And they came out and said, and looked at just state contracts, and when we think of state contracts, you think, of course, construction and building and transportation and banking. And of the billions of dollars the state is spending on state contracts, how is that being dispersed as far as the makeup of these businesses vis-a-vis minority owned businesses and women owned businesses? And what the state found through crunching the numbers is there are a lot of good projects out there, but it's skewed toward larger firms that have completed these contracts year after year. And when we talk about minority and women-owned businesses, a lot of these are really small businesses. And so they can't get a piece of this action because these contracts are too big. They've been won by the same firms every year. So when we talk about business growth and diverse business activity, we really need to look at kind of breaking up these contracts and who's getting them. Because, I know from my teaching background and from my bookstore background, hey, 40 to 50% of the kids in our schools in Washington today are minority students. And so we need to find a way to bridge gaps between business opportunities and the backgrounds of a lot of these students, again, speaking very generally. And if we can do that, then we really help small business in this state. And what we found from, you mentioned the Brookings Institution, which I'd be happy to talk more about, 40 to 60% of employment growth in the state of Washington and nationally is coming from small businesses. And so, and you see conversely, when we've had a really tough economic year, like 2020 has been, small businesses are closing at a much greater rate than smaller businesses. And again, that affects business diversity and jobs and opportunities in all of our communities. So it's really a win-win when we can talk about money for small businesses and how to support people, no matter the background they come from, in growing a small business, because we know that's a really great source of income, of jobs, and opportunities for any community.
I think another aspect to that, because that's so critical, as you mentioned, 2020 with the bigger businesses staying open while the smaller businesses have to shut down. Smaller businesses also provide a greater ratio to livable wages, and it's also majority of people's first job opportunity. That in 2020 has been almost erased. You think of the college graduates that are coming out, or ones in college, and they're looking at their career opportunity. More than likely, they're going to start at a smaller business just to get some experience. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to pay their student loans. These are, fundamentally speaking, smaller businesses are the backbone. We just don't see that much of smaller businesses in the limelight because they might not be on the stock market, they're not on the Dow, they're not on the cover of a magazine, but it's the smaller businesses. So when we talk about the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, people of color that own these businesses with the government, it's huge to get a contract because one, you don't have to worry about someone not paying their bill. The government's going to pay the bill. There is going to be a sizable contract to where not only are you going to be able to have enough money to pay for your materials, but you can pay for your labor and put some in the bank. And I know that you kind of talked about that in the article.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was great to work on the article for you for based on the state's disparity study, because it really gave a big outlook to how we talk about race in this country. And to me, to say we have a lot of inequalities in our system racially, to me that spoke about opportunity. When we say when we say we have systemic racism, that's not a finger pointing activity. Because first of all, to say we have systemic racism in this country doesn't mean that myself as a white guy has not, it doesn't mean I haven't suffered. It doesn't mean I haven't worked hard. It doesn't mean I haven't lost people close to me. It doesn't mean that I haven't suffered racism myself. It just means that generally speaking, numerically speaking, it's a little bit tougher for minorities and women-owned businesses to move up and become big businesses, and to keep hiring and to keep helping our community and keep growing, our tax base. And so to me, it's just a conversation about the opportunities that we've had. And for example, the big statistic that I found in working on this article is that the average Black person in this country has 1/10 or 10% of the wealth of the average white person. And that's kind of a shocking statistic, because when we're talking about businesses, you need a lot of equity, as you're saying, to even start a business and to grow a business. You need a good credit report. You need a good credit score. You need help from your relatives. Maybe you need help from your family to grow this business. And 1/10 of the wealth means that we have a lot of hardworking people out there, a lot of innovative people, a lot of new businesses, but they're not coming at it, from the same background as, again, very generally speaking, as a white business owner. Um, and so that one of the things that I really learned through working on this article is the difference between equality and equity. Equality is a really important concept that, you put out an opportunity, maybe you put out a grant and you say, hey, anybody can apply for this business grant. But we know that from an educational and from a family background, not everybody is coming to that opportunity with the same background to take advantage of that opportunity. So when we talk about equity, we're talking about, hey, we need more grants and loans out there for small businesses. We need smaller class sizes in our classrooms. We obviously need to work on, police brutality and issues like that. Um, because most people, want equality and they're very fair-minded. Most of our police officers do a fantastic job, but we need to take away those roadblocks so that when we come to the table, and we have these opportunities, that everybody has an equal chance to take advantage of them. So when you focus on equity and helping people, then more people can take advantage of these opportunities. And so that's something really, really important that I learned. And so it took the onus off of, hey, we don't need to worry about guilt or what we're doing personally, because most of us are good people. We need to work together to fight systemic racism and spread opportunity, because that helps job growth for everybody. That helps Main Street for everybody. That increases our tax rolls for schools and police and fire and transportation for everybody, when we decide to kind of equal the playing field so we can all take advantage of these opportunities.
Yeah, one thing when you talk about putting out a grant application, as a nonprofit. I remember just doing that. But then when they came back to say, okay, we're going to do another round, there was some organization that apologized to say that these bigger organizations got the grant, but they weren't ready to do the grassroots work. We were like, well, you awarded them that. And this is me paraphrasing, but it was like, yes, they had the system in place because they were already established and they were well known, but they weren't doing the work. And that was a frustrating thing, is that, and now with the state is recognizing that they do need to break up these contracts. But it's the simple things of where, you talk about the kids and the growing rate of diversity that's within the schools and the families that's populating our communities. I'm blessed and fortunate to have a farmer's market right down the road. When it comes time in the summer, in spring, matter of fact, and fall, they're there. I'm also blessed to live right next to a couple of very earthy, crunchy granola, if you will, stores. Uh, a Whole Foods, a Trader's Joe's, a Chuck's Produce. We have all that. But when you talk about the inner city, where you don't have that, it's a big deal. And again, this disparity study is something that was focused on initially on some major metropolitans, but when you go out to the suburbs, and Vancouver is partly part metropolitan because we have a lot of what the big city does, but there's other cities that would be considered like our equivalent that doesn't have the same resources that we have. So when it comes to economic development, of where saying the kids having, a perfect, here a better example when we talk about kids with the 2020 president was, a lot of these kids don't have computers. You can
Right.
give them a phone,
Right.
you can give them a tablet, but this is not the same thing as a computer. And from a computer have internet. When you talk about submitting that grant application or a application for just going to college or getting a job, it's a lot different. Even just so if you're 16 or 15 or 17, it's a lot harder to do it on a phone than it is a desktop or a laptop. And so when we talk about equality, sure, they may have access to it, but is it equitable? Are they able to fill it out and still be competitive? And I think this is what you really highlighted. For those that and Bjorn, here, I won't steal your thunder. You got to talk about the article, where the article is at, where they can find you at.
Well, the article not only is on your website, but I also have a blog, Bjorn Soren 11 .medium.com. And, I don't just talk about the article itself, which talks a lot about opportunities in Vancouver and what we've done and what we can do to not just help minority and women own businesses, but to help everybody and to grow the community. You can find, I'm spreading out the issues involved and the people that I've talked to. And I did a ton of interviews for the article for NW and Associates, a lot of great research. So it's not just the article itself about what's happening nationally, state, and then locally, but there's a lot of references in the footnote for how people can follow up. And then I'm continuing that conversation on my blog.
Awesome. And so the article that Bjorn wrote, you can Google his name, Bjorn Sorensen. That is just for those that are not able to, or if you're writing it down, it's BJORNSORENSEN, Bjorn Sorensen. And I'm going to have it in the show notes as well. But for those that want to come back to it, you can see it in the show notes. But it is on a different website. It is connectedpnw.com. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. Another thing is, and Bjorn's going to send me his LinkedIn. So that will be in the show notes as well, that you can link to him and his adventures. Because, one thing that, as I've been working with other businesses, you can say, hey, this is a Let's Talk Marketing podcast, right? Well, one of the problems that I've discovered which is how Connected was born. I had a hard time supporting or locating minority and women
Mhm.
owned businesses just in downtown, just to get lunch. You
Yeah,
know, yeah, I can go to a veteran spot. That's a little bit more celebrated. It's but do we really celebrate women-owned businesses and minorities like we do veterans? Not as much.
Yeah, and to add to that, it was harder for me to find business owners that I could interview that were minority and women-owned business owners within the Vancouver area to write the article.
Hmm. Yeah, and I would say honestly, I'm not like putting it out there that I'm a minority owned business. For me, it's not that I'm trying to wear it on my shoulders. I mean, it is my skin color, but
Yeah.
it's not something I feel like it's important to identify. Ever since the Floyd killing um, and the protests, Google did put a badge out, and I have said yes, I'm a black owned business, but there's other BIPOC community businesses that may don't have a badge. So, sure, we can silo it on black, but what about Asian? What about Islanders? What about the indigenous Native Americans? And I think that's part of, like you were saying, one, having equality, but then the equity. And I just saw in the last few weeks a commercial with Amazon focusing on STEM related projects in inner communities, but it's like, I didn't never seen that before.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And inequalities grew with based on gender. Women-owned businesses, are falling further
Yes.
behind. And when we mentioned, the average black person having 1/10 of the wealth of the average white person in this country, I mean, those are 1960s numbers.
Mm,
And so I think we do have a lot of work, but it's an opportunity to really grow our community and really expand the business ideas, expand the use of language, expand the use of global business networks, and then to grow within ourselves, to consider maybe biases that we have. And bias is a huge thing in this country. And it's just, again, it's an opportunity to really look at blind spots within ourselves and within our community, and flip over some rocks and say, what kind of opportunities, what kind of networking can we do within ourselves and in our community to really grow things. And there's just a ton of great opportunities. And I really believe, Nathan, that when you look at statistics for 2020, black owned businesses have been shutting at twice the rate of white owned businesses during the pandemic.
hmm
But the reverse is true. And if we can turn that around and keep, the US has a great entrepreneurial culture, and we have a lot of help from the federal government. We can expand tax credits to small businesses. We can expand loans and grants to small businesses. The federal government can't, the government can't solve things. But what I'm talking about is for what we found, and what I found in researching for writing this article, is that for every dollar the federal government spends on small businesses, that's followed up on average by $10 in private equity. You know,
Nice.
small business owners just need that step up in training and equity, in the extension of credit, to really gain a foothold and grow from there. So when the federal government can help out or the state government can help out, and we're talking just, not huge amounts of money compared to all the things that we spend money on, it can really help our business culture and our business opportunities in this country if we look for it. And all of this is a win-win. When you say we're going to fight systemic racism, or we're going to kind of, loosen up and be more creative as a culture, that means everybody wins. Because as you know, when we have more businesses out there, it helps our free market, because competition really helps
Yes.
businesses, and it helps consumers, and it helps families really be on the up and up. So again, talking about all these issues is just an opportunity um, to really network more in Vancouver and beyond for the greater good.
Yeah, and I'll keep it real with you. You have to adapt a mindset. That's for me one thing that I'm still working on, developing that mindset to, one, not play it safe. You got to dream big, take risks, fail forward. So I'm hoping to purchase land. I've never been a homeowner, but I'm looking to be a homeowner starting next year. I'm also to
Ah,
purchase, hoping to buy a home next year. In Jesus' name, that's my goal. And also get some land for the business. And that's one of the first things you got to do to create wealth, per economics. So this is this is where, sorry about that. Let me turn off my text
All
messages.
right.
When it comes to, oh man, and this is we're over our time, but it's such great information. Taking a risk, and I know that sometimes taking a risk is the hardest thing to do, especially when it's on yourself. But every business started out as an idea, and I don't think if it, how can well, I'm just gonna say it. I don't think we're ever gonna be happy if we play it safe.
Right.
So if this is an opportunity you've been listening and you're like, oh, I just have this or that, so as the saying goes, that you can't, there's not a perfect moment. You have to make the moment perfect.
And
And
everybody's got to get involved. You can put out grants and you can put out tax credits and you can put out, loans and donations, but you need the other side
yes.
to really take advantage of it. And Vancouver, you've done such a great job, Nathan, of talking about the difference between selling and branding. you
Mm,
know and
thank you.
as a business manager, I know that some of my best business were from people that I just had personal relationships with. It was the teachers that I went out into the parking lot outside the bookstore and talked for an hour with on gardening, or whatever. Like 1% of the conversation was on the sale of books. The other 99% was this relationship building. And you've done a great job of saying, hey, you got to sell to pay the bills. But if you can't get that sale, regardless of the sale, you can always build that relationship. You can build that brand.
Yes.
And so you could say, you can extend that though to Vancouver, to the greater Vancouver area. What's our brand? We have a lower business costs. We have a supportive state government. We have new business zones. The Fourth Plain International District, the waterfront is booming. We have all these opportunities. We have the Chamber of Commerce. We have PTAC, which is technical assistance for any business person through the Columbia River Economic Development Council. And, so those resources are out there. They're not, in my opinion, as robust as they could be. And a lot of the small business owners we talked to for this article didn't know about it. But, it takes energy from both sides to build those up and to really listen to each other and acknowledge each other, whether you agree or not. And so I think Vancouver has a lot of those things in place, like CREDIC, like the Columbia River Economic Development Council, but we need to keep building them up and see the advantages, because Vancouver is just absolutely the land of opportunity. When you think of the business spaces that we're opening up, when you think of help from all levels of government, when you think of our thriving economic culture, our thriving nonprofit culture, our fantastic libraries, our fantastic school districts, we are really primed for a breakout this year, the Vancouver area. And talking about business development and business diversity for me is really huge, because I think it really allows us to accelerate that even more and have people come to Vancouver because they know it's an open, creative community for business.
Man, mic drop. That's all that needs to be said. Bjorn, where can they find you at, my man? If they want to get in contact with you, read your work, follow you, and see what you up to, where can they
Oh,
go?
oh man, you are too much. LinkedIn is a great way to go, but I just started this blog where I'm going to talk about business diversity. I'm going to talk about my international travel and some other issues. So it's really great to just do Bjorn Soren 11 .medium.com. Just look for my name on medium.com, which is a great site for really good ideas. And I would love to continue this conversation, no matter where you're coming at it, from a business perspective, from a personal perspective, from a personal growth perspective, and from a political perspective. We need to really listen to each other, because I think you need to hear your ideas in your own voice and be appreciated for that. And then you can get to your own next step and grow as a person. And
Mm,
you, Nathan, have done such a great job of saying, hey, you got to work on stuff within first, and then we see the blame decrease, and we see the inner growth, and we see students really doing what they want as far as careers. We see people really doing what they want during career changes. And then when you really work on yourself, you can extend that and help other people as just an
yes.
extension of that inner growth. And so I'm excited to talk about that as well. because I think in the US especially, we have a great entrepreneurial culture, but we have a great individualistic culture, and we know to work on things within and reach out and get help when we need, so we can keep growing.
Bjorn, I just want to say thank you so much for coming onto the show and talking about this topic, because it wouldn't have been the same if I just would have mentioned it and said, hey, look, there's an article on connectedpnw.com, the entrepreneurial plight of minority and women owned businesses. I had this guy, Bjorn, he wrote this, he did it. It wouldn't have been the same. Thank you for laying out that foundation and giving that context. You breathed life into it. So thank you, my man.
Well, you provided that opportunity, and I really loved how you bring this up as a win-win. I really love how you bring all sorts of people together, and through your writing, work on self-actualization. You're just so valuable to the community, and you help so many different kinds of businesses and people, that I'm just honored, so honored and so happy to be a part of it.
I gotta buy you a coffee now, or
Oh,
take you out for
geez.
breakfast.
I owe you, I owe you a coffee, and I can't wait till things open up again. We are so close to the end of this pandemic. If we can just
Yes.
be really careful for a couple more months, get vaccinated or do what you need to do, I think we're going to enjoy being together again and growing more opportunities this coming year. It's really exciting.
Yes. And with that being said, y'all, the sponsor of the show today is ndublove.com. So go to ndublove.com. I'll put some swag out there. So the biggest, which I'm excited to get my first order today, is BU. I've got my BU hoodies. And so when you talk about, man, this pandemic has created so many different problems and just connecting with each other. And when I say end up love, if you don't know me, I am a hugger. I'm a guy that just likes to have fun and just be you. And so that's what the sponsor of the show today is End Up Love. And when you say Bjorn, we are due. We are due for a coffee, a sit down, a meal. Man, we are certainly due for that, because I definitely want to get that bear hug. And for those that don't know, I'm 6'2". I'm a pretty big, stocky guy. I got to look up to Bjorn, and there's not too many people I got to look up to, but he's one of them. He's a little bit slender than me, so it would be good to have someone's arms fully wrap around me and give me that big bear hug back.
Right. Yeah, that would feel good. And I'm going to Spain. Maybe I can and hang out with my peeps in Denmark and hug people just as tall as me. That would feel good. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But hey, we all need it. Peace out, peace in. I think we have a lot to look forward to.
Yes. All right, then. Again, as we wrap up the show, I want to say, as a first-time listener, please feel free to go through the episodes in the last 28 focused on marketing. Before that, though, I focused on social entrepreneurship. As Bjorn mentioned, I used to have a nonprofit, and I talked about that with Social Good. And if you like the show, please feel free to like it, subscribe, share, review. If you want to get in contact with me directly, I'm at info@nwebsterllc.com. Again, for those that are not able to take it down of all the notes, it is going to be in the show notes to get in contact with Bjorn and the links to the article. And again, I just want to say thanks for coming on, Bjorn. Hopefully won't be the last.
No, I hope not. And I'm really glad that you're mentioning all these social connections. And it's really important for people to get out there and write notes to each other and like things. If you're on Facebook or you're on something and you like something, that means you're exposing that idea to all of your friends. So all of these kind of connections, and it just takes a second here, a minute there, but those kinds of things really get those ideas going. And you're a great source of that, Nathan.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate our friendship, and I appreciate the professional side. You are
Absolutely.
the bomb diggity. All right, y'all. We're going to call it a wrap. Thank you again for listening to Let's Talk Marketing with Nathan A. Webster. I wish you nothing but success. So dream big and Godspeed.